Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of Flash Forward, the show where I talk about every single issue of The Flash, including spin-offs. We've been doing the Jeff Johns run, and this week we're going to be continuing the Jeff Johns run with issues 201 to 213, which begin with a six-part story called Ignition. A story that I know nothing about. Like, before I kind of knew what Blitz, like the basics of what Blitz was about and like the other stories, but this one, never heard of, going in completely blind. But before we get into 201, if you're new to the channel, if you're enjoying these videos, then please subscribe to my channel and comment below, ask any questions you want, and I'll probably answer them in the comments below. So let's get straight into issue 201, written by Jeff Johns with art by Alberto Dos, who I think is a step down from Scott Collins. I'm not normally someone who likes to just dump on artists. That's not what I do. But I'm okay with criticizing art when it's worth criticizing. I think that most of the art is good, like the buildings and stuff and like the environment and things like that. That's all good. It's the people that I have a problem with. I don't think anyone is drawn well in this. Characters like Murillo, who are supposed to be, like, black, are whitewashed in this. Like, fully whitewashed, hair and everything, plus coloring, which does not sit right with me at all. But, yeah, so the story begins in Keystone City. As usual, there is a guy who seems to be in the middle of committing a crime. He's holding a gun, and he says, let's see how fast you really are. So you think he is facing Wally West, the Flash. But it turns out that he is actually signaling the start of an illegal race with his gun. So he shoots the gun, the race begins, and Murillo and Chaya are currently investigating some crimes led by Mirror Master. And that's when the two cars speed past them, like the illegal racers. And so, being cops, Chaya and Murillo chase after them. But then they realize that the environment around them is snowing, which isn't normal because it's August. And the icy roads caused them to crash their car. And when they crash, they decide that they're going to try and find the forensic scientist so that they can help them investigate these illegal races. And that's when they realize they see the forensic scientist nearby, and he's been frozen to death. His name is Perkins. And so they're like, oh, we can't call the forensic scientist because he's dead. And it's obvious that he's probably been killed by Captain Cold, so they need to try and find Cold and investigate and see if he was responsible for killing Perkins. So this is when it's revealed that the Flash is no longer around. When Wally West asked the Spectre to get rid of his Flash identity, or like to make his identity a secret to everyone, the Spectre meant literally everyone. Like, even Wally West has forgotten that he's the Flash. And because of that, the Flash doesn't exist anymore, because he doesn't know he's the Flash, which is really stupid. Wally isn't a cop, but he's a mechanic for the Keystone Police Department, so he's pretty close to being a cop. He works with this guy named Wheeler and his daughter Reese as a mechanic, and there's not really anything interesting about these two characters yet. Maybe we'll learn more about them eventually. All we know is that Reese became a mechanic following in the pursuit of her mother, who liked to always get her hands dirty. Wheeler and Wally have a conversation about how Wally got into cars, and Wally explains to him that it was his father that got him into cars, but his father also didn't think that becoming a mechanic would be a good job for Wally to pursue, and that only pushed Wally further into pursuing this kind of career, even though Wally has only shown an interest for cars very recently in the John's run and has never had an interest in cars or being a mechanic before this moment. I'm okay with characters having retcons, but it's very hard to retcon a character and give them interests that they've never displayed within their 60-year history, you know? But whatever. They finish having their conversation, and Wheeler is like, "You're a real American hero, West," and Wally's like, "Real American anyway," and it just feels like some weird dialogue that Wally and Wheeler have. I don't know why Johns had to do that. Like, it was weird. It's just like, at what point has Wally ever been like, "Yeah, I'm a real American, like, that's awesome"? Like, he's never really displayed himself as that kind of character, except for back in the Baron run, back when he was like misogynistic and stuff. But we don't want Wally to be like that. So it's like, what are you doing, Johns? Why are you harkening back to that era of Wally? Maybe it's something to do with Wally forgetting that he's the Flash and it's altered his personality. It doesn't make it good, but it might be an explanation. Wally heads off to a nearby diner that he eats at often. He orders a burger and he drops a bottle of ketchup and doesn't catch it, which is more proof that he doesn't know he's the Flash and that he doesn't know he has powers. He takes his burger and finds another bottle of ketchup because the one he dropped smashed. And he's like, "Hey, can I borrow that?" And the guy sitting at the table is like, "Yeah, sure. Hey, why don't you sit down? Let's have a chat." And so Wally sits at this stranger's table, and the stranger is like, "You're not a cop, are you?" And Wally's like, "No, like, I'm just a mechanic for the Keystone Police." And then they have a little bit of a chat that, you know, they don't really talk about anything interesting other than, you know, how Wally is a mechanic and stuff like that. And this guy introduces himself as Len and offers to pay for Wally's food. And Wally's like, "Oh, cool, nice to meet you, Len." And for some reason, it doesn't dawn upon Wally that this is Captain Cold. So maybe Wally lost his memories of everything he did as the Flash as well. So he doesn't even know who Captain Cold is anymore. And he doesn't know that he's Leonard Snart. Like, because otherwise it would have raised some red flags when Len, like, not only that his name is Len, but he asked if he was a cop. You know, that should be a red flag in its own. If you sit down at somebody's table and they say, "Hey, are you a cop?" you should probably go and call the police, because a normal person doesn't ask that kind of question. But Wally doesn't question it. He just leaves, and he heads home to Linda, and Linda and Wally, there's definitely like there's a wedge between them at the moment. Wally has been neglecting their relationship for some reason. I don't know why. He just is. At the end of the last arc, even though they had lost their children, Wally and Linda seemed to be still very much in love, and Wally was going to be there for her. And then it turns out right after that, he hasn't been there for her and has been neglecting her. Meanwhile, Linda has just lost 2 children through miscarriage, and she's kind of fine about it for some reason. Like, she's moving on very fast. Like, Wally is like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm alright. You know, like, we lost our children, but, like, I should be fine." And it's like, what? The answer to that question of, "Are you alright?" should have been, "Why are you asking such a stupid question like that, Wally? Of course I'm not alright. I lost my freaking children. Like, I've suffered miscarriage. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Of course I'm not alright. And I won't be alright for a long time. I might never be alright ever again." Like, that's the kind of stuff that sticks with you forever. But no, she's like, "Nah, I'm kind of fine. The only thing I'm bummed about is that we haven't really been spending time together." And Wally's just like, "Yep, I sure have been neglecting you." Like, he kind of just thinks to himself and is like, "Yeah, she's right. I've been neglecting her." You know, originally Wally would be like, "I'm so sorry, like, I know I've been neglecting you, but I'll make it up to you." He doesn't bother saying at this time. He just kind of lets her walk away. Wally goes for a drive. I don't know where, presumably to his job. I don't know. He just goes out for a drive. He ends up in a car crash because a truck crashes in the middle of the road, causing a pileup. And as Wally's car drives over another car while crashing, he gets struck by lightning. The car gets struck by lightning, smashing the windows, and then everything around him stops moving. And this is the moment that Wally realizes that he has powers for the first time, because he's completely forgotten he has powers, and now he's found out that he has powers again. And I'm just kind of like, Johns, what are you doing? Like, why are we doing this? Why are we starting over? Like, this is dumb. Like, why? This whole secret identity thing, but also Wally forgot he's the Flash, and he forgot he has powers, so, like, he's literally forgotten everything. Like, all the development that he went through over all those issues doesn't matter because he's forgotten everything. It's like, what the hell? Like, why? Why are we doing this? So Wally realizes that everything around him is really slow, but of course he doesn't know that he's going super fast. He finds a woman in another car, and he opens the car and gets her out to safety, and realizes that her face is, like, frozen because she's, you know, in slow motion. And then the cars explode around Wally, and Wally gets hit by the force of the explosion, knocking him out alongside everybody else. So that when the police show up, there won't be any suspicions that Wally was responsible for saving them. They take Wally to safety, like, the ambulances and stuff show up, and they help Wally to safety alongside everyone else. And then a mysterious guy walks past Wally and is like, it's time to run again. And then Wally's like, what did you... Wait. And he realizes that the man gave him his ring in his hand. So Wally opens up his hand, and he's got the Flash ring in his hand. And that's where the issue ends. And already I am not enjoying where this story is going, because I'm not a fan of the secret identity thing. Like, I'm not a fan of Wally's memories being completely wiped of his time as the Flash. And what will make this worse is if Johns just restores all his memories at some point, because it's like, then what is the point? You know, like, why even get rid of them in the first place if you're just going to restore them again later? Like, I hope that he just sticks with it, because you might as well, because it's going to make it worse if you undo this. Alright, Ignition Part 2. After the stuff that happened with the car crash, Wally discovering that he might have super speed, he decides to test if he really does have super speed by heading to a airplane runway where he wraps his feet in sticky tape and then runs along the runway trying to use his speed. He begins to run faster to the point where the raindrops around him stop falling, but he ends up burning through the sticky tape and his shoes, and he trips over and falls down because he's not used to his speed powers, because he's just rediscovered that he has them. And then he kind of looks at the ring that he has, and he's like, someone gave me this ring. Who? And why? And basically, we're going through Wally's origin again. He's, like, getting a new origin. Like, he's pretty much just been rebooted. Murillo is investigating... Oh, wait, no, it's not Murillo. It's Chaya, sorry. Normally they're together, so I always assume that it's them. Chaya is still investigating dead cops that are being frozen and killed. And again, you think it's going to be Captain Cold. And he kind of pulls his glasses, we see Leonard Snart. He's, like, watching the cops doing their investigation from a distance. And he pulls his glasses off, and he's like, damn it all. So, I think it's too obvious that it's Cold, so it's probably not going to be Cold. It's probably going to be somebody else that's responsible. Wally and Linda meet up again, and Linda says again that she's just moving on from her miscarriage. He's like, you're doing better, huh? And Linda's like, school's good, and I'll never forget about what we could have had, but it's time to look forward, right? You know, not worry about this miscarriage that I just had. Like, why is this even, like, this is stupid. Like, it's dumb. It's like, why is Johns just, like, moving on from the consequences of Blitz like they just never happened. Like, dude. We also established that Linda hates the Flash, and that she blames the Flash for her miscarriage. And she doesn't know Wally's the Flash. Wally doesn't know he's the Flash. So yeah, she's like, don't... Because Wally thinks that the Flash might have been the one that gave him his powers that night. Or been responsible for giving him, like, this... They say it's a miracle. Linda would prefer that it's a miracle. She's like, just say it's a miracle, don't say it's the Flash, because the Flash left me to get attacked by Zoom and lose our children. So I don't want to ever praise the Flash or anything. So just say that what happened to you the other night was just a miracle and nothing more. And Wally's just like, okay, Linda. Okay. And it's like, man, I do not like this new version of Linda and Wally. Like, the idea of Linda hating the Flash is something that is just dumb to me. I do not like it. It is not, like, this new status quo sucks. So Wally heads back to Wheeler at the mechanics to see, like, a car that they've brought in that's been frozen. They found one of the cops dead on it. It was Perkins. And Murillo and Perkins' assistant, whose name is Alexander Petrov, are going to show up to help investigate the car. So they show up, and Petrov is kind of a dick to Wally. He's like, oh, you're not as smart as Barry was. Like, you're not going to be as good as him. And Wally's like, what are you talking about? Like, of course I'm going to be as good as Barry. And Petrov is just like, I'm sorry, like, I've just lost one of my closest friends, like the guy that taught me everything I know, so I'm getting a little bit over my head, you know, I'm getting a little bit short with you, and I'm sorry about that. It's nothing personal. Wheeler tells Wally to, you know, take a walk and go outside and let Petrov and Murillo deal with investigating the car. Wally's just like, have fun. Murillo's like, hothead. So Wally goes for a walk in Keystone, and he gets knocked over by a woman on a bike who is in front of the same car from the other night that caused the crash that Wally was in. And so he sees this woman on a bike and is like, oh, there's a mysterious someone riding on that bike. She got blonde hair. Immediately, I was like, is that Jesse Quick for some reason? Or is it Golden Glider? Like, is she alive again? As Wally watches them leave, he hears a voice behind him that's like, hey, Red. And these thugs show up, and they're like, we're gonna beat the crap out of you because you're out during, like, our time roaming the streets. Like, you shouldn't be out alone out here. So we're gonna beat the crap out of you because of that. And so they try to beat the crap out of Wally. They hit him around the face with a crowbar. And then this guy pulls out his gun and goes to shoot Wally. And the bullet stops in midair because Wally's like, I've got powers, yeah. And he, like, catches the bullet in the air and he drops it. And the guy's just like, did you? And then Wally, at super speed, catches more of their bullets as they continue to fire at him. And because he's speeding around in circles, and he has only just rediscovered that he has speed powers, he's not used to controlling them, so he accidentally causes an earthquake, which causes the buildings around them to collapse down on top of them. And Wally drops his ring as he's trying to run away from the falling buildings, and the buildings fall on top of him, crushing him. But he's still kind of alive because he pokes his arm through the rubble, grabs the ring, opens the ring up, and then the suit comes out of the ring and lands on the ground. And it's Barry's suit. So somebody handed him Barry Allen's ring with Barry's suit inside it. And so we're not doing the chest scar thing anymore. Like, that's gone. Now Wally has Barry's suit again, you see where this is going, right? He's becoming more and more like Barry Allen. He has a secret identity. He works for the police, not in the same job, but he works with them as a mechanic. And now he has the Flash ring with the suit inside it. Like, I know what you're doing, Johns, and I'm not a fan of it. So, Ignition Part 3. Because Wally has forgotten he's the Flash, he now has new memories of what happened with Linda and Zoom. In their memories, the Flash just wasn't there. But Wally was there himself and tried to save Linda as just Wally. And, you know, she was badly hurt by Zoom, and they forever blamed the Flash because of it. Wally wakes up from the rubble that had crushed him earlier, and he sees the costume, and he sees the ring, and then in his head he hears the words, "My name is Wally West, I'm the fastest man alive, I'm the Flash." And Wally is just like, no, damn it, I'm not the Flash, I'm not, it's not my fault. And then he helps the guys that were attacking him out of the rubble as well, because they've all been knocked conscious. And he calls 911 and asks them to send an ambulance. The guys are all breathing, but, like, they need an ambulance now because they might die. And Wally lifts up his shirt where he had broken some ribs, and that's when he discovers that he has super fast healing because his ribs heal right before his eyes. And as the paramedics come to help these guys, Wally heads back to the diner that he'd previously spoken to Captain Cold at to go and talk to him again. These conversations between Wally and Cold are definitely the best parts of this story so far, and that's saying something because the rest of the story is pretty bad in my opinion so far. Like, I'm not into this, but like I'm into this stuff with Cold and Wally. I'm not a fan of Wally forgetting who Captain Cold is and stuff, but I am enjoying these conversations that they have with each other. Where Wally explains to Cold, like, Cold kind of becomes his confidant, and Wally explains to Cold that he's having troubles with Linda, and Cold's just like, have you spoken to her about it? And Wally's like, no. Well, maybe you should talk to her about it. Like, it's probably not a bad idea. Like, that might be what your problem is. And meanwhile, a couple of cops get attacked in a sawmill by somebody posing as Captain Cold. We know it's not Captain Cold, it's somebody else now. They have a gun that has the words proton, neutron, and electron on it, which are all elements. And he even says specifically, he's like, hydrogen and oxygen make ice. Like, that's a fact. And then he freezes this cop. So mixing the element with the ice and the fact that he's using a gun, like, you know, and he's talking about hydrogen and oxygen, it's pretty evident that I know who this guy is. I'm not going to say who it is until it's revealed, but Jeff Johns is making it incredibly obvious who this twist villain is. So Cold sees what's going on in the news when they say that, like, Captain Cold has attacked 2 more policemen, which really pisses him off, and he's like, I gotta go, Wally, and I'll pay for the drink, alright? And Wally's like, okay, cool, thanks. And then he gives some money to Mallory, and he's like, keep the change, Mallory, see you tomorrow. And Mallory's the owner of the diner. Wally decides to put on the ring and Barry's costume. He doesn't know it's Barry's costume. He just thinks it's the Flash's costume. Like, his costume. Because he's like, well, if I am the Flash, I might as well help people. Because there are people in trouble, and I can't just let them get hurt. I have the power. I can help stop it. So he puts on Barry Allen's costume, and he looks exactly like he did back at the very start. Back at, like, issue 1 of Wally's Flash run, where he was wearing Barry's costume. We're going full circle, and that's not a good thing. At least I don't think so. That'd be like if, like, you know, Jaime Reyes, the second Beetle, like the second Blue Beetle, or the third one, I mean, lost his memories, forgot he was Blue Beetle, didn't know how to use the scarab, and then instead just started wearing, like, he found Ted Kord's costume and started wearing that costume and then became that version of Blue Beetle for a while. Like, it's just weird. It's like, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we going backwards like this? So, Reese and Wheeler are servicing on a car, and that's when we are introduced to the new rogue profiler, because Hunter Zolomon was the old rogue profiler, and he's obviously in prison. The new one arrives, and oh crap, it's Ashley Zolomon. This is the first time in the story. You know, I've been enjoying the, like, Wally and Cold stuff, but this is the first time in the story where I'm like, oh shit, like, this is actually kind of interesting. Ashley Zolomon has shown up as the new rogue profiler. His ex-wife, I don't know why she's still going by Zolomon, because they're divorced. She doesn't have to use his last name anymore, but I guess they had to use her last name so that the reader would know who she is, like, or remember who she is. But yeah, she's the new rogue profiler. Interested to see where that goes. So Murillo and Chaya and Prevo, the assistant of Perkins, the cop that was killed, are all at the steel mill telling Captain Cold to come out of the building now, with his hands up, so they can take him in. And the Flash arrives, and they're like, oh my god, it's the Flash, he's back, yeah, Flash, you're awesome, woo, like, you're back, we thought you were gone forever. Captain Cold's in the building, like, he has 2 cops held hostage, I think he's killed one of them. If you can try and save them, that'll be great. And the Flash is like, alright, I'll see it, like, I'm gonna give it a shot, I'll go in there, see if I can save these guys. And so he heads into the building, and he hears a voice that's just like, Flash, think fast. And one of the cops who is frozen is dropped from a railing above. Wally quickly grabs him, but then the floor gets turned into tar by a ray, like by a, laser, like a ray of energy. And he drops the frozen cop, and the cop just smashes on the ground because Wally got stuck in this floor tar. And then he hears a voice that's like, the Flash returns, as do his rogues. And Wally's like, Cold? And this guy reveals himself, and he's like, no, the name's Mr. Element. That's right, it's Mr. Element, a very old Flash villain. Mr. Element was the alternate identity of Dr. Alchemy, because Dr. Alchemy had 2 personalities. He had Mr. Element, who was not necessarily a bad guy, kind of like an anti-hero, like, he wanted to do good. And then Dr. Alchemy was the opposite of that, where he was definitely a villain and was going to do bad no matter what. And so there was kind of confliction with that. He was always one of, like, the Flash's more interesting villains back in the day. Like, back in those old comics. So yeah, Mr. Element's back. It's like, but do me a favor, my friend, don't tell anyone. And then he shoots at Wally and freezes him. And so that's where part 3 of Ignition ends. It ends with the reveal of Mr. Element being responsible for all of these murders, and Wally is frozen in ice. Alright, Ignition, part 4. At the end of the last issue, Wally got frozen by Mr. Element, and he is found frozen by Cold, Captain Cold, who is trying to, clear his name because he's being framed for all these murders. He senses that the Flash is still alive, which he's disappointed by, and then he sees the tar nearby, and he's kind of, like, trying to put 2 and 2 together of, like, who this guy is. He doesn't know who did this, but that's what he's going to try and find out from the Flash. The police have arrived, and they want to take Cold in because Petrov, who is currently investigating this, thinks that Cold did it because Cold's fingerprints have been on the crime scenes and stuff, and Cold's like, I didn't do it! And they all start shooting at him, and he's like, I guess you don't believe me. Alright. This is just what I need, more bad press. And then he, like, creates an ice wall in between him and Wally, and he grabs Wally's frozen body and takes him away for questioning. Meanwhile, Linda is having nightmares of the Flash not saving her from Zoom, because the whole amnesia thing has caused her and Wally to forget that the Flash was even involved. And because of this, Wally, by the way, doesn't remember anything about, like, he knows who Zoom is, but he doesn't remember facing Zoom as the Flash, which means he doesn't remember Zoom telling him about his wife, Ashley. So Wally doesn't know who Ashley is, because eventually he's going to meet her, and he doesn't even know her. He's never heard of her. So Captain Cold takes Wally to a hockey arena. I'm pretty sure it's the same hockey arena that Wally and Linda went to on a date, and they saw Leonard Snart there with his girlfriend back then. This is when Cold reveals that they believed that the Flash was dead because he disappeared for a long time, and they had a party over it. Which is kind of the opposite of what happened with Barry Allen, where they were like, oh, Barry Allen died, and the Rogues had a party, but not to celebrate that the Flash was dead, but to kind of mourn the Flash. But now they're doing the opposite with Wally, where they're glad that he died. And now that he's back, Cold is like, you know, either you're going to help me clear my name, or I'm just going to kill you. I just want to get, like, as much information out of you as possible. Like, how you even came back to begin with. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you were gone for so long, we presumed you were dead, and now you're back all of a sudden. Like, what? He creates, like, an ice field around Wally, and he's like, if you try and run through that, then you're obviously going to get frozen. And, you know, I'll show you. Like, and he throws a bottle of alcohol to kind of egg Wally on and make him run through the icy mist that he's created. But Wally doesn't run. Which Cold is just like, you're so lame. Like, why can't you just run through the ice field so I can show you what my gun can do? And then, after Cold has, like, a good go at Wally, he's like, normally the Rogues have a rule, which is that we don't kill caped heroes, like superheroes, because we don't want people like Superman or Wonder Woman coming after us. But this time I'm going to make an exception, because we got so used to you being dead, and we'd rather you stayed that way. So he shoots his ray, like his ice ray, at Wally. Wally dodges him, and he kind of just, like, smashes his way through the ice field, because moving in the ice field causes the air around him to freeze over his body. So he just smashes it, and he smashes the ice hard enough that it sends Cold flying backwards. And Wally tries running through the ice, and it makes him run a bit slower, so he ends up running straight into an ice wall created by Cold, because he can't use his speed powers to their full potential because of this ice field. So Wally ends up hitting a wall of ice, which causes him to fall over, sliding across the hockey field, and then he just smashes into, like the crowd, like where all the chairs are. And then he realizes that Cold has gone, and in his head he hears Barry Allen saying to him that he became the Flash after he died. Like, because Wally doesn't remember that he was the Flash, so he doesn't even remember that Barry died. Like, he doesn't remember Barry's sacrifice or anything. Like I said, this whole amnesia thing is so stupid, because it takes away all of Wally's past development. So he doesn't remember that Barry died. He doesn't remember that he was the Flash. And he's lost all of the things that he's learned. Because in previous arcs, Wally already learned that he shouldn't just be the Flash just to continue Barry's legacy, and that it's more than that. Like, he already went through that arc, he already learnt that. He already learnt his reasons for being the Flash outside of just following in Barry's footsteps. But now, he's having to do that again. Like, because Barry is talking to him in his head and is like, the Flash mantle is more than just a legacy, Wally. And it's like, we know that, Jeff. Like, we know that it's more than just a legacy. Wally knows that, but you decided to just take away everything and just do it all again. Like, you're being really unoriginal, Jeff. Like, you're retreading storylines that we've already gone through. Because you clearly were in the middle of planning future storylines, and I don't think you'd baked this story long enough. You can tell Jeff is kind of like coming up with it as he goes. So Wally heads back to the Keystone City Police Garage, where he talks to Wheeler and Reese, and they tell him that a woman came by to see him, the new rogue profiler, Ashley Zolomon. So he heads to the police station where he sees all of the posters of all of his rogues. He sees a poster for Albert Desmond, who is Dr. Alchemy but was formerly Mr. Element. And that's when Ashley Zolomon comes in and introduces herself to Wally. Wally has no idea who she is, but he's just kind of like to her, oh, so do you think like Albert Desmond could be the one behind this? Because he used to be Mr. Element, and she's like, no, because he's been focused on being Dr. Alchemy and he hasn't used the element gun in years, so it doesn't make sense that it would be him. Especially because he doesn't have, like, multiple personalities anymore. Jeff doesn't say that, but, like, that is the reason why he hasn't been Mr. Element in so long, is because originally he was Mr. Element because he had, like, multiple personalities, and he doesn't have that anymore. He's just Dr. Alchemy now. Then, you know, Wally learns who she is. She's Ashley Zolomon, and that she was responsible for Zolomon eventually becoming Zoom because she turned his back on him after he killed her father, which is entirely understandable, you know? Like, if you are married to someone who is directly responsible for killing your dad, like, pretty much, like, he didn't shoot her dad, but, like, if it wasn't for Zolomon, her dad wouldn't have died. It's completely understandable that you would divorce this man and, like, you know, not want to talk to them ever again. But the way that it's pictured in this is that Ashley is pictured as being the villain of it. Like, Wally blames her for what happened to Linda. So all of the blame for everything that Zoom did falls on Ashley. And it feels really wrong. And I don't like it. It feels kind of nasty, where they're just like, oh, like, because your ex-husband was responsible for killing your dad and you turned your back on him, that made him Zoom, and then he did all those horrible things, so it's all your fault. And it's like, bro, Wally, what are you talking about? Like, leave the poor woman alone. Like, her dad died. Like, what are you expecting her to do? Are you expecting her to just be like, oh, it's okay, Zolomon. Like, you were responsible for my dad dying, and I'm just gonna forgive you right away. It's like, no, it's not how it works. And Wally is literally like, stay away from me and Linda. He calls Ashley, he pretty much calls her a monster. Like, and it's just messed up. And obviously, Ashley is crushed. She ends up apologizing. She takes the blame. And it's like, come on, like, don't fall for this, Ashley. Like, stand up for yourself. Don't be like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're right, Wally. I am the problem. It's like, no, stand up to him and be like, I'm not the problem. My ex-husband was. So don't blame me. Like, how dare you blame me for what my ex-husband chose to do? It's not my fault. So she tells Petrov that she reckons that, like, they pretty much know that Cold isn't responsible for this, and Petrov is having a hard time believing her because he found Cold's fingerprints on the crime scenes. And then she walks over to a picture of him and she places her hand on his picture, crying, for obvious reasons, because she feels guilty, even though she shouldn't. Wally heads home where he finds a note from Linda who says that she's gone over to Iris's because she needs somebody to talk to, and instead of doing the responsible thing, or the thing that Wally should do, which is to go find his wife and console her, he thinks about it, and then he's like, actually, I'd rather just be a superhero and focus on this murder case. Even though I could just leave it to the police and they'd probably handle it. But no, I don't care about my wife enough that I'm going to actually go to her when she needs me the most. Like, come on, Wally, how dense could you fucking be? Like, Jesus. He's making some of the worst decisions right now. It feels very out of character for Wally to be placing Linda second. Like, his whole thing has always been Linda first, Flash second. Like, that's how important he is, that she is to him. You know? So it's just frustrating when Wally is just like, Linda's really depressed right now, but I should probably focus on the murder case and not go and see her. So, Wally gets visited by a mysterious person who says that they are the one that gave him the ring. Because remember when that guy just, like, bumped into Wally and gave him the ring? Turns out that guy was Batman. That's right, Batman has shown up, and he's like, we need to talk, Flash. And, so yeah, Batman was the one that gave him the ring. How did he get Barry Allen's ring? I don't know. Maybe they'll reveal that. But, yeah, it was Batman. I thought it was going to be Jay Garrick. I thought it would have made a lot more sense for Jay to be the one that would try to trigger Wally's memories of being the Flash. Like, what is Batman gonna do? Like, Batman doesn't know Barry as well as someone like Jay. Or Wally, for that matter. But, whatever. I guess Jeff just wanted to use Batman. We'll find out. We'll see. Maybe Jeff is cooking up something. So, Ignition Part 5. This one actually has a couple of pages that are drawn by Howard Porter, and it's kind of sad because they look way better than the rest of the issue. Like, he draws some flashbacks, and they look great compared to the art for the rest of the comic, which is unfortunate. So, Batman has showed up at Wally's house. He knows that Wally is the Flash, but Wally doesn't know who Batman is because he's not forgotten his identity as the Flash. So he never met Batman, he never met, like, Superman, but he also acts like he doesn't even know, like, that Batman even existed. Which is really weird. But, you know, Batman wants to talk to Wally and, like, basically question him. And Wally is like, nah, we're not doing it your way, we're doing it my way. And so, without Batman's consent, he brings him to Keystone Park for them to have a chat. Where Batman basically just reveals everything to Wally, where he's like, you are Wally West, you were the Flash, you're a member of the JLA. For some reason, 2 months ago, we all forgot who you were, but using my detective skills, because I'm so smart, I was able to figure out that you were Wally West. Through figuring out who Jay Garrick was and how he was the Flash and Barry Allen, and it's revealed that Wally believed that Barry, like, he knew Barry was dead, but he believed that Barry died in the line of duty, and not during a crisis. And Batman's like, no, he died sacrificing his life for reality. And then Batman does what you would consider to be the unthinkable, but he does it. He reveals his secret identity to Wally. He's like, I'm Bruce Wayne. I'm Batman. And Wally's like, oh, Bruce Wayne's Batman? And then all of a sudden he just remembers everything. Like, all of his memories come back. It's literally one of those amnesia arcs where it's just like, remembering one thing causes them to remember everything. Where he's like, oh, Bruce is Batman? Oh, Dick is Nightwing. And, like, Green Arrow is Oliver Queen. And Clark Kent is Superman. And, like, all these things. And so it's like, Wally just knows everyone's identity, I guess. I guess that's a thing. I don't remember that ever being established, but I guess, like, all the superheroes know each other's identities. Especially if you're in the Justice League. Maybe that was a new thing that they did after Tower of Babel. I never ended up reading Tower of Babel. I got close to it, but I didn't get that far. So yeah, Wally remembers everything. Like, as soon as he remembers Bruce Wayne as Batman, all the memories start flooding in. He remembers getting struck by lightning. He remembers fighting the Rogues. He remembers Barry dying. And then he also remembers fighting Zoom. And that's when he starts having a panic attack because he's like, Linda is blaming the Flash for her losing her children, which means she's blaming me. Like, how am I going to tell her? And he kind of doesn't. You think like he's gonna tell her, and there is an opportunity later where he gets to talk to Linda. He doesn't tell her that he's the Flash. He decides to keep it his identity a secret. And so Bruce is kind of like, how did everyone forget? And that's when Wally is like, I remember. It was Hal, as the Spectre, made everyone forget about me. And Wally kind of acts like he didn't choose to do this, but the Spectre specifically said to him, do you want to do this? And Wally thought about it and said yes. And he knew exactly what the Spectre was going to do, because the Spectre said to him that he's going to make everyone forget. And Wally agreed. So he's lying his ass off to Batman like, oh, I didn't know that the Spectre was going to get rid of everyone's memories. It's like, bullshit, Wally. You knew exactly what Spectre was going to do because he told you before you agreed. Batman wants Wally to reveal his identity to the public again, but because Jeff Johns doesn't want Wally to have a public identity, Wally is like, I don't think so. I don't like the idea of going public again. And Batman's like, you gotta come to the JLA tower and reveal your identity to everyone and tell everyone what's going on. And Wally's like, actually, for the first time in a while, I'm going to make the responsible decision, and I'm going to actually go and see my wife, who currently needs me. And he's like, screw you, Batman, and he puts Batman back in Gotham, and he heads off to go and find Linda. Linda leaves Iris's house, where she has apparently learnt something that she needs to talk to Wally about. There's something that she's keeping a secret from Wally. It's not as... It's not something... Like, it's not as dramatic as you think it would be. It's not what you're thinking. Like, you hear that she's got, like, some kind of secret, and they mention Jay and Bart, and you think, like, oh, is it related to Bart, or is it something, like, insane? It's like... No, it turns out she's just been lying to her parents about having a miscarriage. Like, she hasn't told them yet. Because her mum was always ridiculing her for not starting a family and instead focusing on her job. And then her dad started ridiculing her when she got pregnant because she threw away her job. And Wally is just kind of there to console her about this. Like, she reveals to Wally, she's like, I never told my parents. I kept it a secret from them. I should tell them, shouldn't I? And Wally's like, yeah, you should. And I'm going to be here for you when you do. Linda's showing at least a little bit of emotion when it comes to losing her children, but it still doesn't feel like enough. Like, it doesn't feel like Linda is truly... Like, it's the most milquetoast way of showing that Linda is upset. She's more upset about her parents knowing about it than she is about actually having lost her children, is how it feels reading this, is that she's more upset about her parents finding out than she is about the actual children being dead, which is, it feels like the priorities are a little bit off balance. We got confirmation that Wally has kept his identity a secret because there is a moment where Murillo and Chai are in the same room as Wally. They make it very clear to Wally that they don't know who he is, and Wally just chooses to let them continue not knowing who he is. And that's when, Linda shows up and they go off and they have their little talk at the diner and they talk about everything that I just said. Len actually gives pays for some coffee for Wally and Linda, even though it's like 9 o'clock at night. I don't know why they're drinking coffee this late, but they are. And that's when Wally remembers now that Leonard Snart is Captain Cold. So he's like, oh, I was talking to Captain Cold this whole time. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, let's move on from that. Ashley Zolomon has a conversation with Petrov, where Petrov is just acting real weird. He talks about, like, how smart he is and that he should be able to figure out the murder case with Captain Cold. And Ashley is like, don't worry, Petrov. Like, we're going to find the murderer of Perkins and we'll lock him away alongside my murderer. And she's referring to Zoom, obviously. And later, Ashley is, like, walking to her car, and she's like, oh, crap, like, I didn't see the fact that Petrov was trying to open up to me, and I kind of just walked away from him. So she decides to go back to the office to talk to Petrov. The only reason she left was so that Petrov would have enough time to get dressed into his Mr. Element suit, so that he could reveal himself as being Mr. Element. I don't know why he decided to just, like, wait in the office and get dressed. It's like he was waiting. He was just like, I'm gonna get dressed in my Mr. Element suit just so that, like, I can have a moment where Ashley walks in and I can be like, ha! See how smart I am? I was Mr. Element the whole time. Take that, plot twist. I knew pretty early on, like, it was pretty obvious that Petrov was going to be Mr. Element. He introduced this new character who comes out of nowhere alongside, Mr. Element being a thing again. Like, it's pretty obvious who Mr. Element was going to be. I am not shocked at the least. And I think this reveal is kind of funny because it is just like Petrov just decided to stay in the office. Like, he was like, oh, Ashley has left. I have plenty of time to put on my costume and I know she's going to come back. So I'm, like, prepared. Like, could you imagine if she didn't come back? Like, Petrov was, like, waiting for her to come back, and he was just like, she's gonna come through the door any minute now, and I can announce myself, and then she never comes in, and he's just, like, blue-balled, and then he ends up seeing her later, and it's like, I was going to reveal that I was Mr. Element to you, and you stole that opportunity away from me, and now I want to kill you even more because of that, because you embarrassed me. It would have been really funny. But yeah, that's the end of Ignition Part 5, which means we're moving on to the conclusion to Ignition. So, we open on Mr. Element holding Ashley Zolomon at gunpoint, where he reveals to her, Petrov reveals to her why he's done all this. Basically, he was jealous of his mentor, Perkins. He killed Perkins because he believed that he was smarter than Perkins and that he deserved Perkins' position, so he killed him. And then Ashley is like, why did you kill all the other cops? And Petrov is like, because I enjoyed killing Perkins so much that I had to keep killing more people because I wanted to keep the Mr. Element's identity a secret. Like, it became addictive. And the only way to keep it a secret was to kill everyone who was as smart or smarter than me. And so that's who he was killing. He was killing everyone who was close to his IQ. Even though the two guys that he killed at the steel mill didn't seem like they were smart guys, they just seemed like your average Joe. Maybe they were just secretly geniuses. But yeah, now she's gonna kill Now he's gonna kill Ashley because she's the next smartest. That kind of logic is kind of like, aren't you just going to keep killing people because there's always going to be someone that's close to your smartness? Like, because if you kill the next smartest person, then the next person after that becomes the next smartest, So even if it's the dumbest person in the world, if you've killed all of the other smart people, they are the next smartest, and you're probably going to kill them too. So Wally shows up at the last second to attack, like, to save Ashley. He smacks Mr. Element out the window, and then heads outside where he finds that Mr. Element has turned the rain around him into acid, so he spins his arms around really fast to keep the acid rain away from himself. And that's when Mr. Element shows up, and Wally and Petrov have a fight amongst, like, a bunch of cars that are being destroyed by the acid rain. He then decides to turn the rain into daggers and, like, metal raindrops. And so Wally grabs them and he throws them at Mr. Element, destroying his gun, and then he beats the crap out of Mr. Element. Like, he just punches him a million times in the face, knocking him out. He's like, Petrov is finished. So why do I feel a chill running down my spine? And that's when he gets frozen by Captain Cold, and Cold's just like, hey kid, I want you to know, Flash, I didn't kill anyone. And Petrov is just like, Cold. And then Captain Cold just goes and just shoots his ice at, like, Petrov, creating an icicle that just stabs straight through his heart, killing him. It's just like, it's like, now I did. See you around, Flash. And he, like, leaves Wally frozen, and then Wally breaks out of the ice and finds Petrov's dead body and is like, "You're not as smart as you thought, Petrov. You broke a rogue rule. You blamed it on someone else." And this is the one part of this story where I'm like, that was pretty cool. Like, that was a cool moment for Cold. I kind of liked this. I kind of liked how it circled back to Captain Cold talking about the rogue rules. So yeah, Mr. Element is dead. And Wally then goes to the diner to meet with Len, and that's when he realizes that, like, they're never going to meet up at the diner anymore, now that they know who each other are. Like, those talks that they were having are completely over, and now they're back to just being enemies. And earlier on, they were talking about, like, whether or not they were born good or bad, like a person is born good or bad, and Wally's just like, I guess we're never really going to know, you know, which of us was born good or bad. And so then Wally heads back to see Linda because he can't keep his secret identity a secret from her. So he reveals himself to be the Flash, and she gets very upset because she thinks that Wally killed their children. Like, she gets really mad at him, and then she starts remembering everything, and she realizes that he wasn't responsible for killing her children, and she's having all these memories flood into her head, and Wally's like, I'll give everything up for you, like, if you, like, I don't want you to leave me, so, like, I'll happily give up being the Flash if it means we can stay together. And Linda's like, no, don't give up the Flash just for me, like, you care a lot about being the Flash, I don't want you to give that up just for me. And so they, you know, kiss, and then Linda heads off to go and get dressed, and Wally, for the first time in a while, just decides to soak in the atmosphere of Keystone City. For a long time, it felt like Keystone hadn't been as bright as it is this day. Yeah, it's kind of the first time. This whole story has taken place at night most of the time. So yeah, this is the first time we get to see Keystone in the daytime. I guess it's supposed to represent Wally's heightened spirit now, and the fact that he's become okay with just being the Flash, not just for a legacy, but just because he wants to do it. Which is a thing that was already established that Wally had to learn again. Like, he is just relearning the same lessons over and over again. It's kind of like he's stuck in that same loop that Spider-Man is in, where he's constantly having to learn the same lessons over and over again. So yeah, Wally is walking through Keystone City, and he puts on his Flash costume, and he's like, it's a good day in Keystone City. It's a good day to be the Flash. And then meanwhile, Jeff Johns is just deciding that he's going to screw everything up by having Linda write a letter to Wally saying that she needs time to herself and that she's going to be leaving for a while. So she leaves a letter for him and she just goes. And it's like, okay, like, screw you, that sucks. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are we doing this? Why are we having Wally and Linda go through these relationship issues when they're really, like, I'm through with it. Like, I don't want, like, this is not what I want to be reading about. Like, this is not, like, Wally and Linda is one of those couples that I love so much because they're so honest with each other all the time. A big part of their development was not lying to one another, and so because of that, they ended up becoming probably the strongest couple in DC besides, like, Clark Kent and Lois Lane. And so when writers are just unnecessarily trying to tear them apart for stupid reasons like Jeff Johns has, it's very frustrating. Because it's like, why can't they just be happily married and an honest couple? Because that doesn't bring the drama. But there are other ways to do good drama in a Flash story than just resulting to romance. You know, Wade managed to do that. There was some drama between Linda and Wally, but it was never to the point of Linda having to leave, you know, and separate from Wally for a while. And then we have another epilogue after that where Ashley goes to visit Zoom, and she basically apologizes to him for being mad at him for being partly responsible for the death of her father, and she reveals that she's still devoted to Solomon. It's like, I'm going to help you. I'll never leave again. And it's like, Ashley, have some pride, please. Like, this guy is a murderer, or like, he's an attempted murderer. Like, he tried to kill Linda Park. And he did kill some children. So, like, why are you still dedicated to this man? Like, I feel like that is the point where, like, if you have an ex-husband who has straight up murdered children, or anyone, like, that should be it. Like, there's no going back from that. Like, you can't just be like, oh, but I still love you. Like, that's just, like, no. It's the exact same situation I was reading the Titans series, right? And Roy Harper, in that series, for a long time had a relationship with Cheshire, to the point where they had children together. They had a child together, who's called Leanne. And at a certain point, Cheshire became a terrorist. She blew up an entire country, killing millions of people. And yet Roy couldn't get over her for some reason, even though being a terrorist should be enough of a reason for somebody to be like, I'm not in love with that person anymore because they've killed millions of people. So it's just one of those weird comic book things where it's like, why would a person be in love with someone who has murdered people and children? It just doesn't make any sense. But, you know, we gotta throw Ashley Solomon under the bus and have her just be a total idiot being in love with a murderer, I guess. We'll see how this transpires in the coming issues, but that's the end of Ignition. And overall, I didn't really enjoy it at all. I'm not a fan of the secret identity stuff with Wally. I think it just sets his character back so far. This story was more frustrating than it was enjoyable. There were a couple of enjoyable moments. I did enjoy Wally and Cold and their conversations with one another, but yeah, the plot twist of Mr. Element was like, the motivations of Mr. Element were interesting, but the plot twist just didn't work. Like, it wasn't very good. Ashley showing up was interesting, but seeing where that is going, not really a fan of Ashley being devoted so much to Zoom. And all the drama with Wally and Linda is just unnecessary and annoying and just frustrating. Yeah, overall, just a very frustrating story, and there's a reason it's known by many as being one of the worst Flash stories, especially written by Jeff Johns. Especially coming right off the Blitz, which is one of the best Flash stories. But yeah, we're going to be moving on to the next issue of The Flash, which is issue 207, Rush Hour. And Howard Porter is officially taken over as the main artist of the book, which I'm really happy about because I like Howard Porter's art a lot. Not as much as Collins, but I think he's definitely up there as one of the better Flash artists. So, Flash, issue 207 begins with Wally talking about Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, you know, how Superman soars above everyone, Batman hides from everyone, Wonder Woman preaches to everyone, while Wally runs alongside everyone. And this is the kind of stuff that I like. Like, immediately this issue begins, like, there are still underlying problems that are just the aftermath of the previous arc we just talked about. But the beginning of this issue is great because it's Wally just being the Flash, but also being a version of the Flash that I really like, which is he's kind of like Spider-Man. Like, he gets along with everyone, and he's kind of like everyone's friend in Keystone City. Like, your friendly neighborhood Flash, you know? Like, nobody knows that he's Wally West anymore, but everyone knows who the Flash is, and he's always willing to help a hand, like fix a woman's car, or kind of try to help with traffic. Like, this guy's just like, hey, I hate, you know, being stuck in traffic in my truck. Can you help, Flash? And Wally's like, yeah, I'll help as much as I can. So he goes to see one of the cops to see why there's traffic, and it turns out the reason why there's traffic is because they've closed off the roads for a Flash parade that is being held in Wally's honor. Because the Flash is so popular in Keystone City that they have a parade for him. But Wally doesn't do this, for the parades, for the recognition. He does it because he enjoys it. He does it because he wants to. He talks about how, like, Batman does what he does because his parents were shot. Superman does what he does because his planet was destroyed, which isn't necessarily true. He does what he does because the Kents taught him to become a hero. And, Wonder Woman does what she does because she's from an island of peace-loving warriors looking to convert the world, which is a bit of a weird explanation for Wonder Woman, especially because often they were depicted as being an island that wanted nothing to do with our world, and Wonder Woman, like, broke their rules by leaving the island. Like, that was always kind of like an established thing with the Amazons. So Wally heads home to his apartment where he finds the letter from Linda, which is one of the underlying problems right now. Linda's gone because Wally was keeping it a secret from her that he has a secret identity now, and he gets really annoyed because he's like, Linda and I were great when I didn't have a secret identity, and now that I do have a secret identity, why is it my world is falling apart? And it's like, Jeff, see, this is the problem. Why did you even do it? Why did you even bring back the secret identity if you're going to, if you're going to just talk through Wally and have it be like Wally is just complaining about having a secret identity? I guess Jeff thought it would be more interesting if Wally had the struggles that came with having a secret identity. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of this whole thing, their whole relationship just being on the rocks at the moment. So Ashley Zolomon is currently at Iron Heights Penitentiary trying to convince Gregory Wolfe, the warden, if she can try and help Zoom get out of his mental state that he's currently in, because he's frozen mentally. And Wolfe is just like, no. Because your husband is a maniac. And, like Wolfe is... this is one of the few times where I've actually agreed with Wolfe and been like, yeah, like, what are you talking about, Ashley? Like, your husband killed some children and, attempted to kill a lot of people, and you want to help him? Like, no. Because Wolfe is like, we've had therapists in the past, and the rogues here just turn their intestines. Like, the last time we had a therapist, Abracadabra turned their intestines into boa constrictors. So we don't have therapists anymore, because the rogues have already proven that we can't trust them to get actual... Like, most of them don't want therapy. Pretty much all of them don't want therapy. The only rogue who has a history of actually needing therapy was Heatwave. And any other rogues that became good off of they just decided one day that they wanted to be good people. But Ashley is just kind of like, I will do whatever I can to make my husband well again. And it's like, girl, just move on, please. Like, you're better off moving on instead of trying to focus all your energy onto making Solomon better, even though he probably won't get better. Mirror Master, Cold, and Weather Wizard are visiting a mysterious rogue to recruit them into their little band of rogues. The Trickster wants to go to the Flash Parade to cause havoc because he hears some rogues are going there to cause havoc. And Cold is like, no, we're busy. We're doing business meetings, alright? And Trickster's like, suit yourself then, because he's like a teenager. So he's like, suit yourself then, you old guys. And he leaves. And it turns out that the rogue that they're talking to is Dr. Alchemy. Because Cold killed Dr. Element, or Mr. Element, Alchemy is like, yeah, because you got rid of that poser, I will happily work with you. And Cold is like, that's great. Also, we got a gift for you. And they give him a copy of, an original copy of The Catcher in the Rye, because this version of Dr. Alchemy loves books, loves reading. And Dr. Alchemy becomes a member of the Rogues, the close, tight-knit group that Cold has. Because there are the Rogues, which is all of them, but then there are the Rogues, which is like the very, like, the specific Rogues, like the group that is like Cold, Mirror Master, Weather Wizard, like the guys that only trust each other and not like Tar Pit and crap. So yeah, Wally's really mad that his life has been ruined because of what Hal Jordan did, even though Wally consciously made the decision. And he calls out to Hal and he's like, just let me talk to you, like, I wanna settle things, like, why did you do this to me, Hal? And then Hal shows up and he's like, I did this because you wanted it. And Wally's like, I didn't say I wanted it. And Spectre is like, I said it would be all, like, we would take things back to the beginning. And I also straight up said to you that, like, everyone's going to forget. Like, why did Wally think that when he said everyone was going to forget that he didn't include Linda in that equation? But yeah, he's really mad, and he just blames Hal, and Hal is just like, I was just doing what I thought you wanted. Like, what you said you wanted. And, he ends up leaving, and he's like, I was only trying to help a friend, and Wally's like, Hal, wait! And Hal's gone, and Wally's just like, crap. I'm ruining all my relationships with all my friends and family. And so Wally hears like an alarm go off. So he puts on his Flash costume because he senses that something bad is going on down in the festival. He hears gunfire, so he knows that someone's about to get shot. And he sees the bullet heading straight for a member of a marching band. And he catches the bullet, and it's Plunder, the villain from the mirror dimension, who is now in our dimension. He's like the mirror version of Jared Morello. And so Flash goes up to the top of the building and knocks out Plunder, and then Trickster shows up, throws a couple of bombs at a giant flash balloon, which blows it up, causing a bunch of bad explosions, which are possibly going to hurt people. So Wally's like, I've got to save these people. And as he runs towards them, he gets stuck in tar because Tar Pit is here, the character who is made out of tar. And I think his name's like Joe Moriello or Moriarty or whatever his name is. And then an explosion happens between Flash, Trickster, and Tar Pit, and the Golden Giants emerge from the ground and start standing on cars and attacking buildings. Now, the Golden Giants are these Golden Giants from, like, a prehistoric era or, like, another dimension that Wally and Barry went to many years ago, back when Wally was Kid Flash. Like, I'm talking, like, this is, like, Flash issue 9, like, or, like, 109, like, one of the really early Flash issues. So they're here, and it turns out they've been summoned by Abracadabra, who shows up in front of Wally. He's like, what a wonderful day for a show! So Wally is in a sticky situation. Literally, because he's stuck inside Tar Pit. We'll find out what happens, how Wally's going to get out of this situation in issue 208. So, issue 208 begins at Iron Heights Penitentiary, where we get to follow a couple of guards as they watch different inmates get brought into the penitentiary, and they kind of point out a couple of them and talk about them, like Fallout and how he's powering the facility, which last time we saw Fallout was during Grodd's attack on the prison, and Fallout got crushed by debris and seemingly died, but I guess he survived. We just got that revealed to us that he is still alive. One of the guards is like, why do we worship the Flash so much? Like, don't we care that he's, like, taking a lot of our jobs by being a superhero? And the other guard is like, hey, the Flash saved a lot of us. Like, he saved my grandma, and, like, he goes through a lot of people that have been saved by the Flash, and it's like, because of that, like, we owe him. That's why we worship him so much. And one of the guys is like, God bless the Flash. Better put your visor down now. The turtle spits, and, like, they go into the tunnel of the penitentiary where some of the more dangerous villains are being held. Yeah, him saying God bless Flash makes me think that this guard is going to be revealed to be a Cicada follower, because their whole thing was worshipping the Flash like a god. But then again, if he was working for Cicada, he would have been like Flash, like bless Flash, or like Flash bless instead of God bless. So we get a couple of great cameos in this. Clive Yorkin shows up, and if you don't know who Clive Yorkin is, Clive Yorkin was the one that was the character that Barry originally thought was responsible for the death of Iris West. And if you want to learn more about it, I made an entire video all about the trial of Barry Allen, where I went over the death of Iris Allen as well. So you can go and check that out if you want to know the whole history about that. We also get to see the Fiddler, and that's when they discover that the Top has escaped from his cell. And he's also gotten rid of his top hat and his straitjacket that he was wearing in the previous issue. He's like, top of the world, ma, gonna be on top of the world. And he's like running away. I think he's singing a song. I don't know what song it is. But yeah, he's like running through a forest because he's escaped. So we'll probably get to see the Top show up sometime in the future. Meanwhile, Wally is stuck inside Tar Pit as Trickster and Abracadabra and the Golden Giants egg him on. Abra goes to kill Wally with his wand, but then Jay Garrick and Bart Allen show up. And at this point in time, Bart Allen has become the Kid Flash, which is known as the beginning of the fall of Bart Allen as a character. It's really unfortunate. Unfortunately, it's all downhill for Bart from here on. The reason making Bart Allen the Kid Flash is a huge problem is because when Mark Waid created Bart, the whole point of Bart was that he was supposed to be his own character. Like, he wasn't supposed to be a Flash legacy character. In fact, he didn't want to be a legacy character. Like, part of what, Bart's character development was discovering that he is more than just a sidekick. Like, he is Impulse. That's who he is. And by making him Kid Flash, you're just, shunting him into this role of, he's the legacy character. There's even a moment in this where Johns is, speaking through Wally. He has Wally say that he's like, I never really saw Impulse as somebody worthy of the Flash legacy. But, I guess he's managed to change my mind because now that he's the Kid Flash, I do think he's worthy of the Flash legacy. And it's like, that's not the point. The point was that Bart isn't supposed to be continuing on the Flash legacy. You know, he is his own character, and that he shouldn't be in the shadow of the Flash. He's not, it goes against his whole reason for existing. And Waid was rightfully upset with Johns making Bart into the Kid Flash. But yeah, it just really nails it in the coffin when, Johns is oh yeah, Bart wasn't worthy of the Flash legacy, and now he is just because he's Kid Flash. It's he should never have been a legacy character. That's not what he is. So, Bart, Jay, and Wally fight the rogues. Jay grabs Wally and pulls him out of Tar Pit, and then they run fast enough that the speed energy causes Tar Pit to be blown apart. He's still alive. He's just in pieces now. Bart fights Trickster. He, throws him into a cotton candy stand and then beats the crap out of him. And then Jay, Wally, and Bart team up to tie down... they grab, wires and stuff to wrap them around the Golden Giants so that they can pull them over and topple them to the ground, which is cool because they recreate, Howard Porter recreates a classic Flash cover, which is, in the original cover, it's Barry Allen and Kid Flash running around the Gold Giants, but in this panel, it's Wally, Jay, and Bart running around the Golden Giants, so it's a really cool recreation of that panel. So yeah, they tie up all the Golden Giants, and I guess they just leave them in the middle of the city. We don't see what happens to them. But Abracadabra chooses to, he tries to use his magic, and then he just gets the crap beaten out of him by the three Flashes, and he's just alright, I better get out of here, and he, snaps his fingers and disappears off to the 64th century again. And maybe the Golden Giants disappeared with him. We don't know, but that's what I'm going to presume. I'm doing the writing for you, John. You don't have to explain what happened to the Golden Giants. I've done it for you. They disappeared when Abracadabra went away because he was the one that summoned them. Oh yeah, Jay did say. Actually, there is a moment where Jay's like, "At least those giants of his are gone too." So yeah, I guess that's it. Like, Abracadabra goes away, and the giants do too. Um, so Wally decides that he's going to reveal his identity to Jay and Bart because he assumes that they don't know. It turns out they do. So this is where things get a little bit more confusing. So when Hal got rid of everyone's memories of Wally being the Flash, for some reason he chose to like go and talk to Jay, Iris, and Bart and warn them that he's going to get rid of everyone's memories. So they were able to tell Hal and be like, hey, don't get rid of our memories of Wally. Like, let us remember who he is. And Hal was like, yeah, sure. And then for some reason, Hal Jordan just didn't decide to go and do that with Linda too. He kind of let Linda and Wally have to figure out that Wally is the Flash again, which is just really dumb. Like, why? Why would he do that? Like, that just seems kind of cruel that he would do that. That he would just be like, yeah, I'll tell Jay and Bart and Iris that like Wally is the Flash and that everyone else is going to lose their memories of him. But I'm not going to tell Linda that. I'm just going to cause unnecessary drama in their relationship. So Wally sees Dexter Miles. Dexter Miles was the curator of the Flash Museum before it got destroyed. We haven't seen him in a long time. He's back in Keystone City because he's opened up another Flash Museum. So there's a new Flash Museum, but the difference between this Flash Museum and the old one is because now that Wally and Barry have secret identities as the Flash and nobody knows who they are, the Flash Museum doesn't have any dedication to Barry Allen, which is stupid, and I hate it. But for story reasons, there's no Barry Allen exhibit, and there's no mention of Wally West in the museum either. So, like, yeah, there's the angle that Johns is going for is that he wants Wally to have a secret identity, but the way he's writing it is that he's writing it in a way where Wally hates the fact that he has a secret identity, and yet he never goes back on his word and decides to go public again. Instead, he decides that he'd rather be miserable. Like, he constantly complains. He's like, man, I hate having a secret identity because, like, I don't get to be in the Flash Museum and neither does Barry, but I'm just going to keep having my secret identity for no reason. I'm just going to keep torturing myself. Meanwhile, we find Jesse James, aka the Trickster, who is now a member of the FBI, talking to a mysterious woman who is very obviously supposed to be the Golden Glider because she's wearing a white jacket and gold pants and she's got blonde hair, so who else is it going to be? And she's like, you know, talking to him, so I'm assuming that she's working with the Trickster. And they're talking about finding Mirror Master because his goal is to take down the rogues because Trickster's kind of become a good guy working for the government now. And he wants to contact Paul Gamby, who is known for creating the costumes of all of the rogues. So we're left on a little bit of a cliffhanger of like, oh, why does he want to talk to Gamby? Is he going to pretend to be the Trickster again to try and get in with the rogues and take them down from the inside? That would be interesting. But yeah, Wally and Jay and Bart go inside the new Flash Museum, and Wally just complains the whole time. He's like, man, they got statues of idiots like Chillblaine and Big Sur, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, like, step off of Big Sur. I like Big Sur. Like, leave him alone. Like, it's not his fault that, he's an unfortunate representation of disabled people. Like, come on, Wally. Give the guy a break. But yeah, so he gets upset about the Flash Museum, and then he explains to Jay that, like, Linda has left because of the whole secret identity thing, and Jay's just like, what are you talking about? And he's like, having someone reach into her head and play with her memories, her mind was torn inside out. Then getting it all put back together, I think it was too much. It is too, and then Wally just disappears. And Jay's just like, Wally? And Wally has been teleported to the JLA watchtower, where the JLA appear in front of him, and they're just like, I think we all deserve a little explanation. And Green Arrow's just like, whoever you are. So obviously the JLA doesn't know that Wally is the Flash, because I guess Batman kept Wally's secret because he does care. Because Wally was like, I'd rather have a secret identity, and Batman was like, oh, okay, I'll respect that. I won't tell the rest of the JLA that you're the Flash. Meanwhile, Bart and Jay take a little bit of a look around, like, the Flash Museum to see if there's anyone else making trouble in the city while Wally's away. They're also wondering where Wally's even gone. And as they leave the Flash Museum, we see a silhouette that is very clearly Gorilla Grodd, and it zooms in on his face, and he's like, Flash, there is no blood sweeter. And so yeah, we're going to see what happens next when the JLA confronts Wally over his secret identity in the next issue. Alright, issue 209. I have mixed feelings about this issue because, on the one hand, I think it's written incredibly well. But on the other hand, it is continuing the narrative of this whole secret identity plotline with Wally that I'm just not really a fan of, so it takes me out of the story. So there are parts, like, basically anything to do with the secret identity in this story I just don't like or enjoy, but everything else I do enjoy. You know, we get to see a lot of Wally interacting with the Justice League, because this whole issue is about Wally fighting with the idea of revealing his identity to his friends in the Justice League. He doesn't know whether or not he should, or if it's a good idea. He's pretty sure that he is going to. He just doesn't really want to right now because he wants to find Linda and make sure that she's okay. And I think that's where this issue really succeeds, is pushing what should always be pushed, which is the fact that Wally and Linda are something else when it comes to the relationships within the DC universe. Like, they're one of the strongest couples in DC, and they're so closely connected that you can't separate them for too long because it ruins Wally as a character. Because, you know, there are two halves to Wally. You know, there's him, because I wouldn't count the Flash as being a separate half. Wally and the Flash are the same thing. It's only now that Jeff Johns has decided to separate them into two separate identities, but, like, Wally and Flash that's just one person. Like, that's just one half of him. The other half is Linda. And so when you have her be gone for so long, it really is unnecessary, and just it's better when she's around and when she plays a huge role in Wally's life and isn't just a damsel in distress, or, you know, she plays an active role within the Flash series and is the closest thing that the Flash has to, like, a partner or a sidekick, because, like, he doesn't need a Kid Flash. He doesn't need, like, all he needs is Linda, you know? Like, he has his other friends, but, like, Linda is his partner in crime, you know? And that's why I always liked them as a couple, and it's why I was not a big fan of the new turn that was taken within the Jeff Johns run, and now with this added secret identity and Linda leaving. Yeah, but Wally goes to the Justice League, and they want to know his identity. And the first few pages of this are just Wally introducing every single member of the Justice League, giving a little summary of how they're feeling, which is a lot of them are upset, or just they care less about knowing the Flash's identity, and they care more about why they don't remember his identity. Because they know that someone has gone into their brains and taken out their memories, and they know that the Flash knows who did it, and that's just what they want to know. But Wally has no interest in telling them. So when Batman shows up and is like, what are you going to do, Flash? Like, are you going to tell us your identity and why we don't remember who you are? Or, like, why they don't remember who you are? And Wally's like, no, not right now. Because I have something more important to take care of. And he just leaves. He leaves the Watchtower because he's too focused on finding Linda. Because he thinks that if he finds Linda, she'll look into his eyes and everything will be alright. Because Linda is everything to Wally. And so Hawkman is like, oh, Zatanna might be able to use her magic to go and grab him. And Superman is like, no. I'll go and get him. Because I can run as fast as him. Or I can run very fast. So I'm the only one capable of actually catching up to him. So Superman begins chasing after Wally. And he just wants to know why Wally is running away. And why he refuses to tell anyone what's going on. And Wally's just like, it's nothing. Like, it's nothing that the Justice League needs to know about. It's just more important than revealing my identity to you guys. And Superman, eventually he starts kind of like deducing things of like, you know, is it a family member? I'm guessing it's a girlfriend or wife, like partner. Like, are they in trouble? Are they in danger? And Wally is like, no, it's not that. They're not in danger. They're not in trouble. There's not some kind of supervillain. It's more complicated than that. And it's not something that I want to go into. And Wally thinks to himself, while Superman is chasing him, he's like, I could just steal Superman's speed. But the problem with that is that Superman is indestructible, so if I steal his speed, he might trip over, and then Superman might go crashing into hundreds of buildings, causing all sorts of destruction, so that's not an option. I'm just going to have to keep running and outlast Superman. So what Wally does is, while Superman is chasing him, he goes and visits every single place that he thinks Linda will be. He heads to one of the penthouses that the Parks own because Linda Park's father, it's revealed that he invested in Cord Industries, and that got him a lot of money, so he was able to retire. He checks the penthouse, no one's there. And so he heads into the Rocky Mountains, across to somewhere else, Central City maybe. He finds a condo owned by the Parks, and all he can see is that her parents are in there, but the table is only set for 2 and not 3, so he presumes that, you know, no one's in there. Superman grabs Wally's arm at one point and is trying to, like, is just being like, tell me, like, what's wrong? Like, are they in trouble? And Wally just, like, shakes his arm off and keeps running. And that's when Wally realizes, and it's the one thing that I've been wanting Johns to focus on that he just chose not to do for a long time. It's almost like he went back and read some Wade Flash comics and was like, oh yeah, Linda is Wally's tether, right? Like, she is his magnet. She is his tether to home. Like, she is his home. There is a tether in his heart connected to Linda, and if he listens to his heart, he will always make his way back home, which is Linda. So Wally, all of a sudden, is like, oh crap, I forgot that, like, Linda is my tether. I'm such an idiot. I just need to follow my heart, and I'll find her. And so he starts following his heart, and is like, I know where she is. I think she's come back. And so he runs all the way back home with Superman chasing after him. They run through Iron Heights. We get a little cameo from the Turtle, which is probably going to be important later. You get to see Turtle in the cell, and he's like, that should do nicely. And so I don't know what that's about, but it's probably, you know, a little hint at what's to come. Wally heads all the way home, and no one's there. And that's when he realizes, he's like, Linda's not coming home. Like, my hunch was wrong. And he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to get so out of hand, and you're right. We should talk, Superman. And that's when Wally finally unmasks himself, revealing his identity to Superman. Superman's just like, oh, Wally? Because I guess he knew who Wally was before he knew the Flash. Or revealing his identity made all the memories come back to Superman. That's probably what it is. Wally and Clark decide to have a conversation just while they're helping clean up the city. There's rubble and stuff, and they start cleaning it up. I think because they were running through the city, they were causing like rubble and stuff to come out of the ground. So they go back and they help clean it up. And Wally's just like, when I was the Flash with a public identity, they would never let me clean up like this because they didn't want me to make things too easy for them and use my powers. Like, they just wouldn't let me, even though I wanted to. But now that I have a secret identity, I can help people as much as I want because they don't know I'm the Flash. Like, we're cleaning up and stuff. And basically this whole conversation is just Superman talking to Wally and being like, having a secret identity is great, Like, back when Lois Lane was revealed to be dating Superman, or like she was called Superman's girlfriend and it was in the news headlines, every single supervillain went after her. But as soon as it was revealed that she was now dating my old man Clark Kent, the villains stopped going after her and went back to just going after Superman. So it's kind of like John's trying to be like, see, like, Wally having a secret identity is a great idea because now that he has a secret identity, the villains aren't going to go after Linda. And it's like, that's not the point, though. The great thing about the Flash having a public identity is that it wasn't easy and that he had struggles, and it was difficult balancing having a public identity as a superhero with a normal life. It was interesting. And so when you take that away and you give him a secret identity, you lose that one unique thing about the Flash other than his super speed that was really interesting and created great drama in the book, and it also helped create a stronger relationship for Linda and Wally, because it was this kind of thing of like, Linda's in it for the long run. She knows that she's dating the Flash. She knows that her life is going to be in danger, but she doesn't care because all she cares about is being with Wally, being married to Wally, to the Flash, and like, she doesn't care if her life is in danger, and Wally is kind of like, I'd rather it wasn't, and Linda's like, well, you're just gonna have to put up with that because that's the kind of life that we're living. And so all of that's gone now. Like, giving him the secret identity is like the easy way out, and I never saw Wally as being the type to take the easy way out. There's a reason he doesn't time travel, because it's too risky. And yet he agrees to this mind wipe, which is just as risky as time travel. Like, it can be just as bad. There's a lot of repercussions that can come from that. One being that Barry Allen is forgotten as being the Flash, so his sacrifice is completely forgotten. So, as much as I like this and enjoy this conversation between Superman and Wally, and how he says, like, oh, you should get your own Flash cave, and Wally's like, nah, like, Oliver got his own Arrow cave, but he doesn't even use it. Like, I see where Johns is coming from, I see what he's trying to do, but I'm not a fan of it, and I just think it's just not a good retcon, and it makes Wally less interesting, It's great when you have superheroes that aren't all the same. They don't have the same lives. Where when you have every single superhero be like, oh, we have a secret identity and we got to keep our secret identity, and navigate life with it and stuff like that. Like, it gets tiring when every single superhero has that. So it was refreshing to have a superhero who was public. There are some superheroes where it's better when they have a secret identity, like Superman. Like Superman's better when he has an secret identity, because Clark Kent is different to Superman. Meanwhile, Wally West and the Flash, they're the same. Like, they're exactly the same. Wally doesn't put on a different, persona or something when he's Wally the West or when he's the Flash. While Superman kind of plays it up a little bit when he's Clark. Yeah, so I think that's the major difference between the two of them, and why the secret identity works for Clark Kent but doesn't really work for Wally. Because, when you give Clark Kent a secret identity, it doesn't take away anything from him. Because his secret identity isn't entirely who he is to begin with. But with Wally, it's like, no, secret identity, like, that's him. So when you take that away, like, when you take away his public identity, it's just, like, pointless. It's like, why? I don't know. So yeah, Wally reveals his identity to the Justice League, and everyone else. Like, he reveals his identity to the entire superhero community, just not the public community. And he's happy about it. He's like, yeah, the superheroes all know my identity, but the public doesn't, and that's the way I want it. And then we end with Batman and Green Arrow kind of having a conversation about Hal Jordan, which is probably going to continue on in Justice League, and how Batman thinks that like he's afraid of what Hal will do next, because he knows that Hal was responsible for this, and he just doesn't trust him. He's just like Green Arrow's like, what would you have done if you were in Wally's boots? And Batman is like, the same thing I'm doing now. I'd worry. And so that's the end of the issue. Overall, like, I would say, great issue. Like, really well written. Really enjoyed the conversations between Clark and Wally. I think it's just stuck within this retcon that I'm just not a fan of, and that really weighs it down for me. I wasn't expecting to go through a long conversation about the secret identity thing, but I think that's the last time I'm going to talk about it. I think that was the perfect summary of all my problems with it, and from now on, I'm not going to mention the secret identity stuff anymore, because I don't think there's any reason to. Instead, we're just going to keep moving on to the next issue, which is issue 210. 210, issue 210, begins with Captain Cold and Mirror Master having a conversation with the Top, where the Top wants to join them, and they're like, no, you're a nut job, get out of here. And so Mirror Master throws Top through a mirror, and then he starts getting a nosebleed. And Weatherwizard is like, your nose is bleeding. And McCulloch is like, I'm alright, just a wee bit tired. And Cold just kind of looks at him suspiciously and is like, okay, it's a bit weird. The Top flies out of another mirror and says that he knows some kind of secret that Heatwave has, and that when they find out what it is, there's going to be a war. And then we cut to a flashback of Wally and Dick when they were kids, when they were young, when they were just Robin and Kid Flash. It's the first time Wally ever went to the Batcave. He's blindfolded because he's not allowed to know where the Batcave is, but he pulls his blindfold off, and Robin's just like, welcome to the Batcave. It's a really cool thing. It's a really cool moment. There's a couple of references to old stuff from DC Comics. Like, they see the giant penny, and Robin's like, it used to be a nickel, but I accidentally drove the Batmobile into it and broke it in half. So that's like a fun little thing. And Robin's like, where do you and Flash hang out? Like, we get the Batcave, like, where do you hang out? And Wally's like, my aunt's house. which I thought was pretty funny. And then Robin shows Wally his trophy display. And Wally's like, oh, what's that? And Robin's like, mind control helmet from this guy called Crazy Quilt. He's one of my rogues. Like, do you have a rogues gallery, Wally? And Wally's like, yeah, I totally got a rogues gallery. Tons of wackos, like Silver Mask and some other guys, a bunch from Canada. You wouldn't know them. Like, which I think is funny. It's kind of like the superhero version of saying that you have a girlfriend in Canada. Is that, like, he's like, I've got rogues. You just don't know any of them. They're in a different country. Wally asks Robin what Batman is like. And Dick is like, he's fine. We don't agree a lot, but, like, he's okay. And Wally's like, Flash says Batman's kind of off, and he knows it. That's why he gets so many lunatics running at him. Because he's a lunatic himself. And before he finishes his sentence, Batman appears before him, and he's just like, holy crap. And then we cut to the present, where Wally has visited Titan's Tower. There's recently been a new group of Teen Titans that have come together, which is Starfire, Superboy, Cyborg, Beast Boy, Wonder Girl, Tim Drake Robin, and Bart Allen as Kid Flash. Nightwing is there, but he's actually the leader of the Outsiders at the moment, or one of the leaders. And Wally is just visiting. He's not a member of either. And they're just recollecting old times, like old memories and stuff, like going to the Batcave. And, the Titans ask Wally some questions about like how he met Superman, and Wally's like, "Oh, the day I met Superman, I wanted to get his autograph, and I like just seeing him, I felt like I was beneath him, and that I just should have taken my costume off there and then, but Superman did something that surprised me, and it was that he gave me his autograph, and that's when I realized the kind of person that Superman is, and that he's not someone that you should be afraid of or nervous around." And then they ask him about his first experience of Wonder Woman, and Wally has never told anyone his first experience with Wonder Woman. When he was a teenager, he was a very horny little teenager, and he sped himself up on purpose so that he could look at Wonder Woman for like an hour without her knowing. But the way she looks at him is in a way that she knew what Wally was doing. And Wally says that it felt like the look of a judgmental mother. And from that moment on, Wally has only ever seen Diana as being like a mum and like a mother, and not like someone that he's attracted to. So I think that's funny. You know, Wally had his one moment of looking at Wonder Woman and being like, "Ooh, a woman," and then immediately was like, "I'm not attracted to this woman. She reminds me of like my mom," and which I think is pretty funny. And so he says goodbye to the Titans because he's got to go to his job as a mechanic, and Tim's actually the one that figures out he's a mechanic. And Wally's like, "Oh, that's great. Like, Tim, that's how smart Tim is. Like, he was able to just figure it out." And as he leaves, he has a chat with Dick. And Dick is like, "I've heard the Penguin is coming to Keystone City, like, trying to create connections. Do you want some help?" Wally's like, "I can handle him. It's all good." Bart actually wants to talk to Wally as well. He's like, "Hey, like, Jay and I have something to talk to you about." And Wally's like, "Not today. I'll talk to you later." And during his conversation with Dick is like, this whole situation with Hal and the secret identity, like, you gotta understand that, like, I understand why you did it. Like, why you did what you did. And I support you. And Wally is like, "Dick, I'm not stupid. I can see your eyes through your mask. Tell me the truth." And Dick is like, "Alright, I'm on Batman's side. I don't support the decision you made. I understand why you made the choice. I just wish you didn't. I wish you didn't resort to going to the Spectre." And Wally's like, "Well, I did. And look what happened to me. I lost my wife. You happy? Like, see ya, Dick. Like, have a good night." And he leaves. And Dick is just kind of left looking off into the distance. Wally describes Dick as his best friend. He always has been his best friend, but he also describes Dick as like that best friend who knows you like a brother, but you just don't see each other very often. That's how Wally describes his relationship with Dick, which I think is perfect. I've always been a huge fan of Wally and Dick. It's my favorite friendship in DC, because while they don't see each other all the time, whenever they reunite, it's always great. Like, it's always good. Like, they just immediately, you can tell that they're best friends. So Wally heads to his mechanic job where Wheeler is, and he has to service one of the cars, and it happens to be Ashley Zolomond's car, which Wally isn't happy about. He's like, "Ugh, Zolomon." Meanwhile, Ashley Zolomon is visiting Hunter, or the child killer, and is still sympathizing with him, and is like, I know that you're stuck in this frozen state, living the same memory over and over again, and it's going to be my job to free you from this. It's like, I was the one that got you discharged from the FBI's profiling unit. I was the one that helped destroy your life. And she's just blaming herself for everything that happened, which is unfortunate. And it sucks that she has to be written that way. It sucks that Ashley is taking all the blame for everything. I hope that this ends better for her, and that she realizes that she's better off without Hunter, and that she isn't the problem, and that it is Hunter. Like, he consciously made these choices. She didn't force him to do what he did. Meanwhile, we get a cool reveal. So, Jesse James, the trickster, last time we saw him, he's working for the FBI. He orders Gamby to make him a new costume as the trickster. So he's operating as the trickster under the FBI. with the Piper, he's recruited, Hartley Rathaway, and Heatwave. And they're working together to bring in the other rogues, the bad ones. See, they're the good rogues, and they want to take down all the bad ones. So they've hired Heatwave to go after Murmur. And so Heatwave is like, yeah, like, I'll go after Murmur. It takes some convincing, but Trickster is like, I'll donate funds to your family. Imagine how many skin grafts you can get for $1 million. And Heatwave is like, alright, that Murmur's toast. Meanwhile, Gerda and Double Down, two of Wally's enemies, go and visit the Penguin, because they're going to be his connections in Keystone City. And this is where we get a little bit of backstory on Double Down. Apparently, he was a gambler who lost out on a gambling game, and he he murdered a winning gambler in the parking lot, and a deck of cards flew out of the gambler's jacket and grafted themselves to Double Down's skin and became a part of his skin. There's no explanation as to what these cards even are. Double Down just says that he thinks he's cursed. So we don't even know what these cards are. They're magic cards. Ooh. Gerda, his origin is a little less weird. It's weird, but it's also a lot more sadistic. Gerda is just straight up revealed to be a rapist in this issue. I say rapist because, he probably still is currently. With how interested he was in Magenta to the point where it was borderline creep. I wouldn't put it past him for not changing his ways at all. His origin was that he was a steel worker, he raped a woman, and then the other workers are awesome and wanted to kill him because of it, because they're all great guys, and they threw him into a bunch of molten metal because he's a rapist and he deserves it. And turns out the molten metal was from a Star Labs experiment, and when he emerged from it, he was made out of metal. So they've gone to visit the Penguin, and that's when the Flash shows up to take down the Penguin's birds and the Penguin as well. He basically suffocates the Penguin by spitting around him enough that he loses his air and it knocks him out. Gerda gets a good few hits in on Wally, and Nightwing beats him really easily. He just turns on, Nightwing shows up, he turns on the sprinklers, which causes Gerda to rust and fall over. And Dick arrives, and he's like, look, what I said to you back then, Wally, I'm sorry. The truth is, the reason I was upset was because I wished you to come to me and not Hal. That's it. That's why I'm upset. I wish you to just come to me, and I would have helped you. And Wally's like, if something happens again, I promise I'll come to you, Dick. Alright? And then Dick's like, now, there's one more thing we need to do. And they break into the Flash Museum, and, they go into the Flash Museum to check out his rogues, because this is kind of a throwback to the Batcave, where it's like, oh, now that Wally has his own, Batcave, essentially, they're gonna go and have a look at all of Wally's rogues, and Wally can brag. And that's when Dick kind of points out to Wally, he's like, the reason you have all these rogues is because you dress so colorful, and you have a colorful personality, and so you draw all these rogues to you. And also, you're continuing a legacy, and that legacy has brought a lot of villains with it. Including this guy, Gorilla Grodd. Oh man, this statue looks so real. It's so furry, and the drool. And it turns out that this isn't the statue, it's the real Gorilla Grodd. He attacks Dick and Wally with his mind powers, and is like, Nightwing, this is a pleasant surprise. You and the Outsiders made a fool of me. I was only planning on feasting on the Flash tonight, but I'll save room for you. And he grabs Dick, and Dick's just like, ah, as his mind is being attacked by Grodd, while Wally cups his head, as his mind is also attacked by Grodd. So we'll find out what happens, and whether or not Wally and Dick can defeat Gorilla Grodd in the next issue. Alright, issue 211 begins with Gorilla Grodd, Wally West, and Dick Grayson all in a massive fight with one another in the Flash Museum. we have a little monologue from Wally about how he's so fast that he can feel pain before it happens. Like, the signals of pain are sent to his brain faster than they actually emerge, which is kind of cool. That, like, before his nerves can even react to the pain, Wally knows the pain and can feel it, and he knows that it's coming. So, yeah, like, they fight back and forth with Grodd. It's cool seeing Nightwing fight someone like Gorilla Grodd, like, throwing... What would you call them? Like, ring rangs? Wing rangs? I think that's what you call them, right? Wing rangs? That's what I like to call them. That's a fun name. Into, like, Grodd's chest. Grodd uses his mind powers against Dick, causing him to relive or live an alternate version of the Haley Circus accident, where instead of his parents dying, it's himself, and it's his mom, like, calling out to him, like, Dick! And Dick's just like, Mom! And so he's just, like, cradling on the floor, like, ah! And Grodd starts tearing into Wally's flesh and is like, you know, your flesh is much better when you're afraid, which is why I use my mind powers against you. Grodd's plan is to just ruin the reputation of the Flash, and that begins with destroying the Flash Museum, just destroying everything about the Flash, because he hates what the Flash stands for, which is a symbol for the people that makes them feel good. And Grodd hates that. He's like, humans don't deserve to feel good, and the fact that you're the symbol for them, like, it really grinds my gears. And so he, like, picks up a whole part of the building and just throws it at Wally, like, all these shelves. But Dick comes behind Grodd, jumps onto his head with a pipe, and just shoves it down Grodd's throat. And Wally is like, can you hold him off for, like, 7 seconds? Like, can he stay alive for 7 seconds? And Dick's like, probably 8. And Wally's like, great. Alright. So he takes the opportunity to leave the museum, run far enough that he can gain enough momentum, which, this is essentially Wally's first time doing a, like, full Mac punch. I don't think we've ever seen him do this kind of move before, where he runs around the city gaining all sorts of momentum enough so that he can run straight back into the Flash Museum and hit Grodd full force, sending him flying out of the museum, across the city, and then back into the Flash Museum. He, like, kind of pinballs him around the city by running into him, straight back into the Flash. Yeah, he's just like, ding, 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 and then Grodd ends up just knocked out on the steps of the Flash Museum, where Dick arrives and is like, great, Grodd's out. Awesome. If you ever need help again, I'll be happy to help, you know. And Wally's like, I could lend you some of my speed so that you heal faster. And Dick's like, I'm all good. I heal pretty fast on my own. And that's when Wally turns to Dick and is like, you were talking about how, like, being a bright symbol is a problem because it draws villains like Grodd. But after what Grodd said, I kind of like being a symbol for good. Like, I like standing as that symbol for Keystone City that makes everyone feel good. You know, it's not about Bart, it's not about Jay, it's not about Barry, it's not about Wally. The Flash is a symbol, and I'm happy to be a part of that. And Dick's like, yeah, you're right. You know, originally I agreed with Batman. I agree more with you, you know? I'm kind of jealous. I kind of wish that Batman and I were like the Flash in terms of, you know, being a symbol that people can look up to instead of being a symbol that criminals fear. You know? But that does kind of go against the idea of, like, you know, Batman is loved by the people of Gotham, or, like, a lot of people of Gotham. Like, most of the time he's not pictured as being... Like, they're not pictured as being afraid of Batman. Like, kids love Batman in Gotham City because Batman is good with kids. You know? So Chaya and Murillo show up and Wally's like, hey, we got Grodd for you. And the Flash Museum is fixed and reopened, and there is a new exhibit, which is the day that Wally West saved the Flash Museum from Gorilla Grodd. And one of the kids is just like, so cool. And Wally's like, yep. Very cool. Meanwhile, we find Mick Rory aka the heat wave, and he's just watching a building that's on fire as like the firemen come to put it out, and the trickster calls him on his little earpiece and is like, "We're currently searching for Mirror Master. You know, I'll keep you up to date on what's going on." And Mick's like, "All right, sounds good." And then he looks at the fire and he's like, "Beautiful." So his obsession with fire still exists. Grodd gets taken back to, I was gonna say Impel Down. This isn't One Piece. He gets taken back to Iron Heights, where Wally has a bit of a conversation with Wolf, and Wolf is like, he's not gonna be able to get out of there. Do you want to talk to Grodd for a little bit? And Wally's just like, no, it's all good. And then all of a sudden, the Zoom's door opens, like the door to his cell, and Wally's like, oh, Zoom! And it's just Ashley. Ashley comes out, and she's like, oh, Flash, it's great to see you. Like, I'm the new profiler. I was wondering if I could help you in any way. And Wally's like, what are you doing in Hunter's cell? Like, you're not trying to get him out of that state, are you? Because if you do, we're going to have a problem. And Ashley's like, you sound just like Warden Wolf. I've come here to help him because no one else will. Despite everything he did, I know in my heart he's not an evil man. And Wally's like, you're right. He wasn't an evil man. But he is now. And he's right, Does Ashley not know that Solomon, killed some children? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe she just doesn't know. But I assume that she would because it was on the news. So she's actively trying to help this guy. And Warden turns to her and is like, Ashley, can you promise me? Look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you're not doing this just because you feel guilty. That you're only helping Hunter for your own peace of mind. And Solomon's just like, Ashley is like, good day, Warden. And then she drives away, and as she's driving, she looks in the mirror, a tear kind of forms in her eye, and then she tries to, stop her car, and it won't stop. She's just like, come on, stop! And then her car just goes straight off a hill and crashes into a tree, and her car just explodes. And then we find Hunter Solomon in his cell, reliving the same memory over and over again. He doesn't have a gun. Trust me, Ashley. He doesn't have a gun. Trust me. And then all of a sudden, Solomon awakens and says, Ashley? And so it's almost like he sensed what's just happened to Ashley, and it seems like Solomon's been broken out of the loop. And so Wally has returned to his mechanic job, and as he's having a conversation with Reese, Murillo and Chaya show up. And they're like, maybe you should call your friend Flash. We got a bit of a problem. Ashley Solomon's been in an accident, and it's not looking good. And that's where the issue ends, so we'll find out where this leads in issue 212. So, issue 212. This one actually has art by Stephen Cummings and Wayne Faucher, so a different art team. This issue is essentially it's a Mirror Master issue. We're doing another issue that's focusing entirely on a rogue. We get to see Mirror Master's origin. I have mixed feelings on this one because Jeff is normally really good at writing origins for villains, but it felt like with this one, he leaned a little too much towards the edgy side. This one is really edgy. Very edgy. It's like Jeff trying to make Mirror Master the edgiest villain of all time by giving him the edgiest backstory of all time. Mirror Master is pretty much everything under the sun in this issue. If you're thinking of the worst possible person, Mirror Master is that person, but there's also a part of his origin that's trying to make you feel bad for him, or try and make it seem like he's not entirely, or he is a bad guy, but he's just an unfortunate bad guy. But I don't know. I don't think I can actually really care about Mirror Master all that much when, for multiple reasons that I will reveal in this. So it begins with a couple of agents sent by Jesse James the Trickster, because he's trying to hunt down different rogues. So he sends these agents after Mirror Master. I don't know why he just sends normal guys after Mirror Master when he's got, like, the Pied Piper and Heatwave working for him. Like, he just sends regular guys after Mirror Master. One of the most powerful... Like, he's one of the rogues with the potential to be the most powerful because he has control over all reflections, not just mirrors. Like, he can enter and exit from pretty much anywhere as long as there's a reflection. But, and, you know, predictably, these guys just get obliterated by Mirror Master. You know, he turns one of them into glass just by shooting him, and then this guy just falls over and shatters to pieces, and like, blood goes everywhere. It's really grotesque. There's blood that just comes out of the shards of glass, because that is him. There's a really gnarly shot of his eye surrounded by blood, kind of just like his eye just all like, because he's dead. Like, all veins and stuff. And then he attacks the other guy by, like, he kills him off panel. Because this guy, like, tries to fight him. He attacks McCulloch, and it turns out that it's just a Mirror Master clone. And then McCulloch just appears behind him and is like, that's 7 years bad luck. Or it would have been. And then he kills him. He's got a Scottish accent. I can't do a Scottish accent. And this whole time, he's kind of monologuing to himself about being the Mirror Master. It's like, that's why I stick with the rogues. They respect that. They know I'm with the group for my own selfish reasons, just like them. Name is Evan McCulloch, but I spend most days calling myself the Mirror Master. And then we learn about McCulloch's origins. So McCulloch was sent to an orphanage at a very young age. We'll learn more about his parents later, but for now, he grows up in this orphanage with this woman who looks after all the kids, whose name is Mrs. McCulloch. And he loves her. Like, not like that, but like, he loves her like a mother, because she smells like cinnamon and stuff, and he just loves that. He's just like, oh, she smells like cookies. It's great. Everything was great, but there was one bad thing about being at this orphanage. This kid named Georgie. Georgie is this horrible kid who basically tortured the other kids, or like threatened them, like threatened their lives on a daily basis, because he would often sneak out of the orphanage to do stuff, and he would tell the other kids not to tell Mrs. McCulloch, otherwise he would slit their throats. And because they're kids, they would often believe him. One night, Georgie just decides to pick McCulloch. His name isn't Evan McCulloch yet, but like, he decides to pick of Evan to torture this time. He takes him out to a creek, and he's basically like threatening to drown Evan. Like, we know that that Georgie probably isn't going to, but Evan's just had enough at this point, and he just grabs a rock and beats Georgie over the head with it. He's just like, leave me alone, and he goes poof, and Georgie falls into the water, and then Evan drowns him. And yeah, he just holds Georgie's head under the water until he drowns. It's like, I can see images. I remember looking at myself, my reflection. It's a powerful thing, that is. No better way to understand yourself than gazing into your own eyes. Makes you realize what you're really capable of. Me and Georgie never bothered me again. I still send Miss McCulloch a share from every job I pull. Help keep that place up. It's all anonymous, of course. Every Scotsman knows. You never do a good deed just to brag about it, do you? You just do it because it's right. So it's kind of like this thing of like, Evan is a messed up child, but at least he's sending money to Mrs. McCulloch. And I guess Mrs. McCulloch just didn't care that, like, it's almost as if, like, Mrs. McCulloch knows Evan killed this child, and she just doesn't care, because I guess she hated Georgie too. So McCulloch, Evan, who is now going by Evan McCulloch, he leaves the orphanage, and he takes Mrs. McCulloch's name with him, because that's how much he respected her. And now he's got to make a living, and the best way to make a living is to do crime. And he's so good at crime that people start hiring him to do crime for them. So he kind of becomes a mercenary. One day, McCulloch gets hired to kill someone. to just kill this guy. And he goes on top of a building. He finds the guy. He gets his sniper rifle. And he prepares to shoot at the guy. And then he's like, there's something wrong about this. Like, why do I have to kill this guy? Like, he just seems like a normal guy. Like, I don't feel right about this. But he takes the shot anyway. He kills the guy. And then he realizes who he's killed. Because Evan has a picture of his parents that he's had with him ever since he was in the orphanage. And he looks at the picture and he realizes the guy that he shot was his own father. And then he sees his mom come in and be like, oh my god, like, because her husband's just been shot. So Evan just realizes that he killed his own dad, and so he's pretty traumatized by that. Turns out his father's name was Louis Erickson. He was the owner of a big company, and the guy that wanted Evan to kill him wanted to take over the business, or like take stock from the business. We don't get to see it happen, but Evan mentions he goes and pays the contractor a visit and kills him because this guy contracted him to kill his father. You know, it's kind of as a revenge. And then he goes to the funeral and he watches from a distance as his mum lowers the casket into the grave. He wants to go and visit his mum and meet her for the first time. So he follows her home. And he waits a little bit, and then he enters the house once he's finally gotten courage to. Or at least he tries to. The door's locked, obviously, so he busts the door down. He enters the house, and then he enters the bathroom, because he thinks that his mum might be in there. And when he opens the door, he finds his mum in a bathtub bleeding out because she slit her wrists and killed herself. Because she couldn't live without her husband. And after that, Evan just stares in the mirror, like into his reflection. He's like, I stood in that room for over 12 hours just staring at myself. Into the looking glass I went. Evan eventually got found by the FBI, and he thought that he was caught. But it turns out the FBI actually want him to work for them, because they've got shady things that they need to do, and the best way to do them is to hire a mercenary. But not just a mercenary. This is where it's revealed that Evan became the Mirror Master. I don't know if it was revealed in Animal Man, but it's revealed in this. That Evan became the Mirror Master as like a disguise. He was working as a mercenary for the FBI, and the best way to disguise himself was just as a regular supervillain. So when he was out doing crimes, like, that's stuff that he was doing for the FBI, and the Flash got in his way. And so that's how he met the Flash. Eventually, he started steering away from the FBI, and he joined the Rogues, and became a member of their group. And then we head back to the present, where Evan heads to a postal store to deliver a package to James Jesse. I keep calling him Jesse James. His name is James Jesse. I keep forgetting it's backwards for no reason other than just subverting it, I guess. James receives the package and he opens it up with a note on it that says, James, the suit stays with me. And it's attached to a mirror where James's men are trapped inside the mirror. And so James is like, our agents are back from Keystone, courtesy of the Mirror Master. Mirror Master heads back to the Rogue base. They ask him if he wants to join in on their gambling, like on their game. He's like, nah, I'm busy. And he heads into a nearby bathroom. He's like, I can use a mirror 1,000 different ways. Can turn a man inside out, cut a hole through a 7-foot concrete wall, make you see things from your fantasies or from your nightmares. They laugh at us, at me being the bloody Mirror Master, because they don't see. They don't look into the mirror with honesty at themselves. Everyone needs an escape from the sins of your past and the sins of your future. The real world's just not for me. Spat on my face, took my life and twisted it around, made me into something I didn't choose to be. I ain't ever going back. I ain't ever leaving Wonderland. And it ends with Evan just straight up snorting cocaine. He goes into the bathroom, he sets up a bunch of cocaine for himself on a mirror, and then snorts it off. And that's how the issue ends. Overall, like, it's another example of Jeff developing a rogue a lot, but I think the mistake that was made with this one is that Evan is just way too edgy to the point where his backstory is like, how are you ever going to feel bad for him? Because the way they frame it is that you're supposed to feel bad for Evan, but how am I supposed to feel bad for him when, first of all, he's a racist, because at one point he refers to one of the FBI agents that's fighting him as an Indian giver, which is a very offensive term for indigenous, especially towards indigenous people. So not only is he racist, but also, like, he's a drug abuser. Like, he does cocaine. He, like, chooses to. Like, it's not even like, oh, like, I'm doing this to escape from something. It's just like, nah, I just am this now. Like, this is who I am. I was forced to become like this. I was forced to, snort cocaine because of what's happened to me in my life. And yeah, he's just an awful person. But yeah, the thing that definitely took the biscuit was when he was just straight up racist. And I don't even know how Jeff even knew what that term was. I actually had to look it up to know what it was, because I saw, like, Indian giver, and I was like, that sounds offensive. And so I looked it up, and I was like, yep, definitely is. Jeff, how do you know that word? Because there's only two options. Either he didn't know what it was, and he just wanted McCulloch to say something racist, like to show that McCulloch was racist, so he just looked up, like, racist terms and found the one that fit with the situation the most, I guess. Or Jeff knew the term himself, and I question, like, why would you know that term? Because I didn't. I'd never heard of it before. It has to be something that you've either used before or you're actively searching it out. But yeah, so that's that issue. Overall, just too edgy for my taste, really. I definitely preferred the Piper and Cold origins, because at least those were more realistic. Like, Cold's origin was, he was in an abusive family, but, like, that's very common, unfortunately. But Mirror Masters was definitely the most unrealistic of all the origins, just trying to be edgy for the sake of it. But anyway, we're going to move on to the next issue, the final issue that we're going to be covering today, issue 213. Alright, so issue 213 begins off pretty incredibly. It starts off where the last issue ended. Mirror Master has snorted cocaine, and he's just on a high right now. And Cold is just like, hey, Mirror Master, you alright in there? We got through a dozen hands, and we haven't heard a peep out of you. He's like, oh, it's all good. I was just having a little time to myself. Be out in a minute or two, alright? And then the door is frozen over, and Cold is like, no, it's not, pal. And he kicks the door open. He's just like, boosh. It's like, damn it, McCulloch. It's like, it's not what you think, Cold. I was just, you want to make your nose bleed? Let's do it the old-fashioned way. And, like, McCulloch is, like, trying to get the cocaine into the toilet. And Cold just, like, smacks him across the head, punches him in the face. He's like, we don't have a lot of rules here, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. And he smashes McCulloch's head against the mirror and then punches him straight through the wall. Like, how strong is Cold? He punches him straight through the wall. No drugs. You're a good rogue, McCulloch. Better than Scudder ever was. But I need you sharp, understand? So say it. And McCulloch's like, Cold. And Cold is just like, say it. No drugs. And I'm like, wow, what a way to start the issue. Like, that was pretty incredible, Jeff. I'm not gonna lie. Wally is currently at the police station being interrogated by Chaya and Murillo because they believe that Wally murdered Ashley Zolomon on purpose. Because I actually forgot about this, but it reminded me when I was reading this. Wally serviced on Ashley's car. I definitely mentioned it earlier, but I didn't know it was actually going to play a role. But yeah, he serviced her car, and so he is the number one suspect, because it's like immediately after he serviced her brakes, the brakes weren't working and she crashed. And Wally is like, I didn't kill her. Like, I know I didn't. Somebody has to be framing me. And they're just like, we're going to get this out of you someday, West. Like, we got all day. Meanwhile, at Iron Heights, remember when Wally and Superman ran past Iron Heights, and the turtle was like, "Oh yes, give me your energy." Well, it turns out he actually needed that because, like, the turtle was kind of out of commission. Like, he was in jail. He wasn't really able to move because he moved slower than everyone else, and that kind of gave him a jump start that he needed to increase his powers 100-fold. So a couple of guards go to check on the turtle because his cell smells awful and they think he's dead. And so when they open up the cell, Turtle just walks out, and that's when his powers start taking effect. The turtle now has the ability to affect everyone with his slow powers. So he slows down everything around him, and it covers the entire city. So the entire city slows down to a crawl, including Murillo and Chaya. But because Wally is a speedster and is connected to the Speed Force, it doesn't affect him entirely. It makes him very slow, but he's still able to move around. And he's not exactly sure what's going on, so he decides to head out into the city. He dons his Flash costume, heads out to find out what's going on, and then he's just like, "What's that stench?" And the turtle's just like, "Hey, Flash, it's me, the turtle." And in this issue, Turtle's kind of just like a little guy. Like, he's just kind of like, because he's miserable, because he has to live at a crawl. Like, he has to live incredibly slow, and now finally he's living in a city where everyone is living like him, and he's the fastest one, so he doesn't exactly do anything super evil in this. I mean, he slows everyone down to a point of that they're frozen, but, like, he doesn't hurt anyone. He even, like, grabs a little kid's balloon and gives it to the kid, but then it's kind of established that, like, is the turtle a creep? Like, is the turtle a pedo? Because, like, there's a couple of times where he goes up to children and, like, he's being nice to them, but they're also strangers' kids that he's kind of being nice to, and it's like, oh, like, is Turtle one of those guys? Like, is he a weirdo? He steals Wally's speed from him, and he's just like, "Yeah, I'm not so slow anymore." Meanwhile, Captain Boomerang meets up with Heatwave. It's actually a cool moment where Heatwave is just, like, smoking. Like, he's got a pick in his mouth that he's set on fire, and a boomerang just goes shunk next to his head, and he's like, "G'day, Mick." He's like, "Digger, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "I just came here to ask for some money. I just need a loan." And Mick's like, "Yeah, sure. You used to be one of, like, what happened, Boomerang? Like, you used to be one of the best." He's like, "I will be again, Mick. I bloody hell will." And the turtle keeps absorbing Wally's speed because he seems to feed on it, and Wally is like, "I've got to connect back to the Speed Force and get him off of me," and he manages to connect back to the Speed Force, and he kicks Turtle and sends him flying. One thing I like about Turtle's design in this is that he has a costume that resembles a turtle, and he can hide inside of it to protect himself. So he just, like, goes into his little turtle shell and is just like, boonk. And Wally then learns about that Turtle has more than just the ability to slow people down. Because he can steal people's speed, he can then give it back to them. So he speeds Wally up on purpose, causing Wally to crash through a bunch of cars. But because Turtle has slowed everything down, the turtle can kind of just, like, push the cars around and put them back into place. There's actually a truck with tar that gets thrown up into the air, and Turtle kind of, like, pushes it around. For some reason, he forgets to put the truck of tar on the ground, though. And so what Wally does is he kind of pretends that he's been knocked out of... Like, he's been knocked out, so that the turtle will walk up to him, and the truck of tar is floating above them, and then all of the tar slowly lands on top of the turtle, covering him in tar, and eventually, like, the turtle can't breathe, so he just passes out, and as soon as he passes out, everything goes back to normal, and so Wally is able to quickly get him out of the tar and put him back in Iron Heights prison. And then he heads back to his interrogation with Murillo and Chaya, and Wally's like, "I'm not going to answer any of your questions until I have a lawyer." And Murillo's like, "Fine." And then he's like, "He was pretty defensive when I brought up the whereabouts of his wife." And Marilla's like, Willa said she left him. But did anyone see her leave Keystone City alive? And so now they're coming to the conclusion of like, oh, well, Wally tried to murder Ashley Solomon. Maybe he murdered his own wife. Which is a fine conclusion to come to, but as a reader, knowing that he didn't kill her it just makes Murillo and Chaya look like idiots to the reader. But from their perspective, I guess it makes sense that they would think this. So yeah, Ashley is still alive. She's in the general hospital. A couple of nurses are taking care of her and are just like, man, it's really freaky, like, what happened to her? What's even freakier is that she's in the same hospital room that Linda was in when she was in the hospital. There's a moment where Zoom, like, makes a very quick appearance in the hospital room, and then he just disappears. And they're just like, did you hear something? And then they look at the table side next to Ashley, and there's a potted plant. And they're just like, oh, where did those come from? Wally heads back to the garage in order to just continue working on cars. Willer is just like, look, get your mind off of Ashley Solomon and get back to working on the car. And Wally is wearing his mechanic outfit, and he puts his hands in his pockets, and he pulls out the brake. So it turns out, like, he pulls out like a screw for the brake. So it turns out when he was working on the car, he remembers that he had a hard time remembering where the piece was. And he never realized that he'd left it in his pocket. And so Wally's like, oh my god. Like, I did do it. I caused this. It was an accident, but I caused this horrible thing to happen to Ashley. I made a mistake. And then, while Ashley is in a hospital room, we get a news broadcast about Sue Dibney, the wife of the elongated man, being murdered. And that it's causing, the superhero community to go wild. And so that is our little hint at the next event that we're going to be talking about, which is Identity Crisis. So we'll learn more about what happened to Sue Dibney and Elongated Man when we do Identity Crisis. But we're not going to be doing that next week, because next week I'm going to be doing a special episode where I talk about the 0 Hour 30th Anniversary Special, a special that was written by Dan Jurgens and Ron Mars and created by a whole bunch of different artists that had released a month ago, I want to say. It's recently been released. And so, I'm going to be covering that next week, and then the week after that, we're going to be doing Identity Crisis. And in that Identity Crisis episode, I will also be covering the Flash arc, The Secret of Barry Allen, because it takes place during Identity Crisis, so I thought I would do both of them in the same video. So look forward to that. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope to see you next week for the 0 Hour special. Have a good one.